just gonna smile really big, like for Smile Sora, and that's just gonna be this podcast.
March 10th. Wake up, everybody. Today is Saturday, March 11th, and we are Never Free to Play, a podcast where we talk about all the video games we wish we were playing, except for today, where we talk about only one video game that we actually played, Kingdom Hearts 1, because this is a Kingdom Hearts 1 spoiler cast, review cast, all-encompassing cast. Because I am your host, Karch Palashi, joined by my one co-host today, Sean Mybers. Sean, are you smiling and waving at the camera like you said you would?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
I did it at the beginning.
All right, it's been a while. If you've been watching this channel or recently subscribing for whatever reason, because I honestly don't know why anybody's been subscribing, but the number's been going up, so that's pretty cool. We haven't done one of these in a really long time of any kind, with our faces on the camera and talking, but this is something we used to do a lot, and we want to do again at some point. So here is our best foot forward. A little context as to what the heck this is about. In 2021...
Best foot forward.
We made a bet. I said, I'm going to play every single mainline Final Fantasy in a calendar year or in a 12-month span. And Sean said, bet. And I said, all right. And I did. And he had to buy a certain number of video games for me as a result. And then I traded in a couple of those as vouchers to make him play Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2, two of my favorite games of all time. And Sean enjoys Final Fantasy, and he's, pretty big fan of Disney, and so I knew he wouldn't hate it, but he also would never have done it on his own. And so, Sean.
That is also true.
Sean.
Yes.
You have played Kingdom Hearts 1.
I have played and beaten Kingdom Hearts 1.
Played and beaten, exactly. Because you make
I've
it
also
good on your
started
bets.
Kingdom Hearts 2.
Started Kingdom Hearts, but we'll get to that. We'll get there when we get there. Okay, so we're just going to focus on 1 today. We're not going to talk about 2 at all. We don't want to accidentally spoil the 15, 17-year-old game by accidentally for those who are still looking to play it. But real quick, highlight, sentence or two, how was it?
It was interesting. So in a lot of ways, because this game is what, almost 20 years old now?
I think it released in 2020 or 2002 in America, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, so it's over. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, it's interesting because a lot of my turn of the century games that I remember playing when I got into gaming were like Baldur's Gate and StarCraft and not really 3D games.
Right.
And so to go back and play an early 3D game that wasn't on the Nintendo 64 wasn't that I didn't experience at the time because I only had Nintendo consoles back in the day.
Right.
It was a bit of a challenge to get back into the design mentality of those games.
For sure.
I've grown babied and accustomed to basically the game being like, go here, now go here, now go here. And Kingdom Hearts was like, all right, you kind of know you're supposed to be in this area, but what you're supposed to do next, just wander around until you figure it out. And so a lot of that and the way the camera. The camera is very reminiscent of terrible cameras of the early 3D era.
So you're playing the best version, or you played the best version that exists.
I did. I played
of that
the final
game.
mix,
and they've fixed a lot about that game since it launched almost over 20 years ago. Unfortunately, the camera remains pretty much as bad as it always was.
In their defense, a lot of cameras still are crap these days.
True.
So
that's true.
But I overall, I mean, you're right. I enjoy the odd Final Fantasy that I get around to playing. I honestly expected you to use this bet to make me play Final Fantasy 9. So I'm kind of shocked that I still haven't been forced down that route. Although we're also supposed to be doing that together. So
we are. That is also
at some
planned content at some point.
So yeah, I overall, looking back at it, enjoyed it. I was annoyed by several things. The combat gameplay never entirely grabbed me, but I think a lot of that goes back to it was an early 3D game, and we've played games. I've grown accustomed to games with much tighter gameplay.
Yeah, for sure.
The Disney stuff was fun. I love Disney. It was some of the worlds were interesting because I loved Atlantica and the Little Mermaid. I could take or leave Tarzan, and I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But overall, I had fun. I'm still not entirely sure that I fully understand the story of Kingdom Hearts.
Okay.
And I have a feeling, given the number of the games that there are, that's only going to get worse for me because I'm only playing 1 and 2, and maybe I'll play 3, but I'm already realizing that the side games that I thought maybe didn't have integral storylines have very integral storylines.
Very integral story, especially the earlier. There's a time period in which they're super duper important. I feel like they're starting to become less important again. Not that there's not nuggets in there, but like Chain of Memories, a Game Boy Advance game, in all scopes, including its story, it's still a significant portion of story leading into 2.
Yeah.
That if you didn't play it, you will be scratching your head. But just a quick aside, I think in 2, it's masterfully done in a way where like it just adds to the mystery that sometimes you get, like, in media res kind of situation, basically. But again, I don't want to drift too far into conversation about Kingdom Hearts.
But and so it's interesting because I would say that probably the weakest part I felt of Kingdom Hearts was actually its story, its execution of its story.
That's interesting.
The Disney worlds were cool, but it almost felt it made me think of like a major studio's like side project in a lot of ways. And I know it can't have been that, because I know getting like the deal with Disney had to have been huge and a massive effort and had, best foot forwards. But it felt like the time put into maybe getting the Disney stuff right subtracted from building the actual game's lore and story effectively.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, you can view this entire game as a prototype for what Kingdom Hearts would become in a lot of ways. Like the combat is solid enough, and like you said, the Disney polish is definitely there, but it's lacking in so many ways that the series will go on to either abandon certain aspects or really hone in on and define as part of its DNA essentially. So that totally tracks. So overall, that sounds like you're swimming in this 7 essentially. This is a nice 7 out of 10 for you.
It's a quality 7.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So before we get into details about your experience, what was your opinion and limited experience, having not played any Kingdom Hearts? I know that you live with someone who plays Kingdom Hearts. So what was that like?
So Katie is a big Kingdom Hearts fan, and I say that actually about like the first game. Like I think she's beaten the first game more than I've beaten any individual game.
Interesting.
But she's only beaten like, and she's tried to beat Chain of Memories like twice now and cannot get herself through that game.
It's not really worth it.
But she's only beaten like Kingdom Hearts 2 once, and I know she's beaten Kingdom Hearts 3 once because I remember when we bought it. But she is if I had to pick a game that is her every so often goes back and replays, it is probably Kingdom Hearts, because I think she's beaten it like 5 times.
That's more than me, but it's really easy to go back to. It can absolutely qualify as someone's comfort food for sure.
Yeah, which was great for me, because I could be like, "Hey babe, what do I do?" Or she would load up when I wasn't playing, and she would like go. She was the one who would go back and retread the other worlds and get the trinities and get all the chests and level me up a couple times so that I was always ahead of the power curve.
That's excellent.
I'm a little sad that that's unlikely to happen for Kingdom Hearts 2, because it's probably going to make that game harder for me than what I experienced in Kingdom Hearts 1.
Are you playing on? I assume you played on whatever the normal difficulty was on the first one.
I did. Yeah.
Okay. It can be pretty difficult at times. So.
Yeah, I had. I'm sure we'll get to it. But there was a couple boss fights that gave me trouble, and that the rest of the time I was pretty good. And then once I got Tinkerbell, it was usually easy street as long as I could summon Tinkerbell.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's talk some highs and lows, I guess. So, Disney worlds, there are a handful, even in this opening game. Later on, they'll reduce them depending on either the size of the game or the size of the worlds. As those get bigger, you get fewer worlds too.
Yeah.
Still a decent amount. But what was your favorite Disney world?
Ooh, probably either Atlantica or Nightmare Before Christmas.
That's interesting about
Halloween Town.
Yeah, Halloween Town is a fan favorite for sure. Definitely one of the top levels, especially in Kingdom Hearts 1, when people are like, what's your favorite? Mostly because it's one of the few where you get a costume change. Yes. And it's a significant costume change. It's a cool costume change.
That was the big thing going on that one was the like you land in and it's almost like the feel of the game shifted a little bit while you're in Halloween Town with the costume change and the tone shift to match Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right.
And Nightmare Before Christmas, of all of the like Disney properties that are in that game is the one that's it has the movie and that's it. There isn't other Nightmare Before Christmas content that I'm aware of.
True.
So
yeah.
it might have been like the most unique to get to revisit because Little Mermaid has been done ad nauseum. Most Disney properties had they may have had their main movie and then they had a TV series, or they had the the direct to TV movies or whatnot that they've had over the years. So Night Before Christmas I think also had that where it just felt the most fresh, perhaps because of that.
So tell me a little bit more about you liking Atlantica, because that's pretty polarizing. I won't say people hate it, because I just don't think they do, but it can be polarizing, most specifically because all of a sudden you're underwater and now you essentially have to use three-dimensional controls to move around. So what did you like about Atlantica so much?
I think what I liked most is I felt of all of them, the Atlantica maybe had a little bit of a tighter story, and so I think going to Atlantica, you're coming off of I don't remember the name of the whale, but the Pinocchio whale, Monstro, and then before that Tarzan, and those were to me like their little in-world stories had kind of poor direction. I remember Tarzan in particular, there's a moment where you're just like, you had to run down the one gorilla, and it was just like, is it here? Nope. Is it here? Oh, I found him. Okay.
Every time
now
I
gotta go check
that.
every other area again, because I don't know. There's no hints of which place they're going to, so you're just running in each area until you find them.
It's the worst.
And so Atlantica just felt like it was better. It was more organized and put together, and it may have been also by that point I had like readjusted to playing early 2000 3D games. And so I felt comfortable in how to navigate the game. The 3D movement didn't bother me. I liked once I got, I think, Dolphin Kick, because then traversing was great. I will say it did have some tougher enemies.
It does. It is a step up in just the general, like those, and kind of more annoying. You got to fight those big, like, anglerfish looking things, and then they explode into the tiny jellyfish, and it's just like, come on. And then, again, if you don't really, I don't usually have a problem with it anymore. I can't remember how I used to, but if you don't adjust to that new control scheme, and the lock-on isn't working super well for you, it can be even more annoying in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, what was your least
did miss my
favorite
dodge.
world? Yeah.
Probably Tarzan.
Tarzan's pretty bad.
And part of that too is because of that gorilla, and like and the platform. There's a whole vine platforming section that took me a while to figure out, just because it wasn't. I was thinking that I had to jump vine to vine, and apparently there's just like a reaction button you can press to go vine to vine. So that screwed me for about 10 minutes of building frustrations.
Because failure means a screen change and having to climb. Because the screens are vertical in this game, or in that world, way more than just you're not running from room to room. Essentially, you're going up and down floors basically, and it's not quick and it's not easy, and it's like the second world. Like if you're going in the intended progression, it's like the second world, and so it's really, really irritating.
And it was just, I will say too, it was strange. Your first two worlds are Alice in Wonderland, which is admittedly a Disney classic, but also quite old, and then is Tarzan, which is not like, which is post Disney Renaissance. So it just wasn't because then you get past that and you get to Peter Pan, and you get to Aladdin, and you get to Little Mermaid and Nightmare Before, much more iconic.
Yeah, it's an odd duck for sure.
Properties.
It stands out through the whole series, but definitely in this first game is like,
and like poor Tarzan voice actor who got to come, reprised his role as the character to do a bunch of grunts.
Hey man, paycheck's a paycheck.
But that's true. But this also gets to like Tarzan's a good point to touch upon my bit of confusion with the game. So there's the whole heartless aspect, which I mostly get, I think. But you kept having, so you've got your Disney villains, and some of them are clearly like working together. But like, and it's kind of hinted at that I don't remember the hunter's name in Tarzan because I guess I don't care enough. Clayton. And then he's got like a chameleon that's controlling him.
Yeah. And
it's never really well explained.
No, I mean, I don't know if is the chameleon controlling him. Is that your takeaway? I don't know if that was my takeaway. I just
that was like at least at some point, because then that was my takeaway, is that he was under its control, and so I was like, all right, so like because you get into this whole aspect of like, you can lose your heart
for sure,
and with Clayton, I was like, wait, do you lose your heart, and then like the heartless gets born and controls you, and
No.
it just felt thrown off from the rest of it, and so it threw off as the game. And maybe to find that better on, I was like, yeah, but what about this? I still don't understand this.
Yeah, it's a very video gamey, hand wavy moment where you just have to have a final boss, but you can't really just wail on a human who has a gun.
Yeah.
Like it's a bit weird, and they probably wanted to just, I don't know, add some. I don't know. Maybe he was being controlled, maybe he wasn't. He was definitely starting to succumb to, you know, his inner darkness. He was on his way to probably becoming a Heartless, but he was like an entry level. Both of those worlds have just kind of like ancillary, incidental villains. You know, you don't really get into the meat and potatoes of the cabal.
Yeah, that's true. They're not part of the evil cabal,
Right.
Read by Maleficent there.
But the nature of the relationship, the Chameleon and Clayton, is, I think, definitely up for interpretation. But yeah, the Chameleon was definitely a Heartless. Clayton was not. It wasn't his Heartless or anything like that. He was just a bad dude who, either because they were both evil or perhaps being mind controlled in some way, you know, they had teamed up in that final battle. But yeah, I'd never considered how that could be confusing. I experienced this game for the first time, like when it came out at a friend's house, and then I would have go on to beat it myself, you know, before I turned, 18, however exactly how old I was. So like, I take so many of these things as just like foregone conclusions at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Tarzan's my least favorite world.
Gotcha. So your favorite world is Atlantica / Halloween Town. Least favorite Tarzan. That tracks. My favorite world is and it's, I don't know if it's a cop out per se, but it's definitely Olympus. It's the Hercules place, because I love the arena. I love the arena so much. It's a lot of fun. Did you do anything beyond the required tournaments?
I did. So I got as far as I beat Cloud because I got the Chocobo Keyblade.
Mm-hmm.
I did not go on to beat Sephiroth. I skipped that.
Oh, I mean, I've never done that. Not in all my years have I ever beat Sephiroth in any of the games.
I know Katie has done it at least once because I watched her do it.
Yeah.
On one of her playthroughs, but no, I got as far as knocking most of Olympus out. Because on the way to the one where you beat Cloud, I beat Herc, which was I guess at a minimum needed in order to lock that world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun though. That world's got a lot of like some of the most of the extra like side content, because there's like additional tournaments, and then you can run through them by yourself without Donald and Goofy's assistance. Eventually you fight Hades, which is where he's like the final boss of that tournament, and that is kind of like the cap on that story. And then there's even more after that, and then finally, yes, you can fight Sephiroth as like the super secret ultra boss back in the day, and then they added another super secret ultra boss later on, but we won't talk about that. Let's see. I had another question.
I thought Agrabah was pretty good, just because it was Aladdin and you run around the town, and I had fun there. That's actually I think that fight was the. Could you go to Agrabah? Before Atlantica. I think that was the first fight that I died in.
Oh, interesting.
Was
okay.
that fight
the boss fight or just fighting anything?
No, the lion, because I didn't figure out that you needed to go. I kept thinking, oh, this is just waves of enemies. He'll eventually run out of waves of enemies.
No.
I didn't realize you needed to go whack the eyeballs on the sand lion, and eventually the pressing weight of the unending enemies wore down my resources.
Yeah, I don't like that fight because it's just really hard to get to the top of the head and hit it for more than two strikes.
I think early on that fight, I was like, if they wanted me to get up here, it would have been easy to jump up here. Clearly, this isn't a thing. And it was like, nope, I was wrong. No, the actual boss, Jafar, and especially Genie Jafar. Genie Jafar was a joke.
Yeah, he is. It's annoying at best, and it's just a steamroll at worst. How did you feel about your partners in crime, Donald and Goofy, tagging along for the whole journey?
I loved having them, but by the end, I hated Donald.
Because
he seemed like he always died.
He does
like Goofy only went down in like the longest lasting, most extreme boss fights. Donald got hit by a stiff wind and would go down. It was like, my dude, what is going on?
Yeah. You can mitigate that some with like they do have AI options, like what kinds of spells and abilities they use, but he is so fragile. It's so annoying. And getting your party members back up, they'll always come up eventually, there's a timer, but like getting them up before that timer is almost impossible if you're not going to waste a bunch of really important items on them and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Donald is he's a bit of a joke in the circles regarding Kingdom Hearts 1. But as characters, did you think that was a smart move to have Donald and Goofy as your like confidants?
I thought so, and
Mhm.
the early link there to Mickey, but then to pull Mickey kind of you really don't see Mickey until the very end of the game again.
Right.
I thought was clever because obviously I mean Mickey's the big honcho, and so to pull him out kept him from stealing the spotlight.
For sure.
But then you still want that tie to core Disney, and so having Donald and Goofy who are already as characters used to being second fiddles.
Yeah.
Was nice. I enjoyed Donald and Sora's like rivalry for the earlier parts of the game before they'd all really become friends.
Mhm.
I loved Goofy. I loved when I was devastated when they left me when I lost the Keyblade,
Yes.
and then I was beyond happy when Goofy returned to me out of friendship.
It's a really good scene. It's one. It
is.
It
It's
doesn't lose its punch years later. It's just. It's not schlock. It's a step above schlock. It's just super heartwarming and cute, and it's just
and it's nice because they do a pretty good job of building that trio's relationships. I mean, honestly, Goofy and Donald are played off as having known each other for a long time, as they should be. But like I said, that rivalry between Sora and Donald, especially I think going into Monstro. And arguing over flying the plane and crashing, and Goofy playing middleman. But Goofy is innately friendly. But you start off as Sora as, hey, we were told to come find you, so now you got to come do things with us. And so it is fairly well built up their friendship, so that when they do leave you, it's devastating, and when they do come back, it's heartwarming.
Yeah,
so
across
definitely nailed the Disney moment.
Across the whole series, there's nothing better than the Sora Donald Goofy relationship. It remains consistently good. It grows as slow as it grows. There's not a lot of growth there. They're just three happy dudes, most of them stupid, on their journey to save people from bad stuff.
There's not an excess of brain cells,
right?
In that group.
But
that is true.
But it's extremely endearing, and you can't help but love it. If you hate it, you're a hater, and that's all there is to that.
You're probably a heartless.
And it's like the beginning of this. This series loves trios. There are friends. Sometimes people overlap in certain trios. Like Sora has his two human friends, Kyra and Riku, and then he's got his Disney friends, and that's a separate trio. And then in Kingdom Hearts 2, they'll introduce like three more trios, and then so on. And so there's always like a 3-person friend group, and it's just a weird like little tradition that they started in this first game.
People innately like when things come in threes, so all the more power for exploiting that.
What do you think about the opening as far as just like presentation and story and stuff, starting a little slow on Destiny Island before you get flung into the darkness and go on your Disney Final Fantasy journey?
I liked it. I liked it was kind of nice to get with Kyrie and Riku, and then there's a couple other kids on that island. It's a little weird because it's somewhat implied that like they have homes that they go back to, and there's parents, but obviously you never see any of them.
So just a small, tiny spoiler for Kingdom Hearts 2. This is just a tiny little island off the coast of a bigger island where they actually live. This is just like their hangout place.
I got that far into Kingdom Hearts 2 where I've seen like teenager Kyrie now and saw that, and I was like, I don't know if that was intended in the first game or we're retconning.
Oh, there's so much retcon. Every game introduces some new gigantic. I say gigantic in like it's a huge thing, and yet at the same time it means almost nothing. Like when you look back, it has no effect on the previous story for the most part, but it fits enough and is this huge thing going forward. And that is one of them. It's like, oh yeah, it's a whole world. It's like Earth basically.
But I liked Kyrie and Riku, but also and obviously I mean finding them and finding Kyrie in particular is Sora's primary motivation for much of the game. But I also felt like we had that early moment on the island, and then Sora's trying to find them, but it felt like I never felt like I got the bang out of that story that out of that friendship that I was looking for from the game. Like I just felt like it came up, and maybe it's just like I almost feel like I needed a moment where those three were back together post island for a little bit before they all scattered again, because it just never felt like it quite paid off. And you got Kyrie going heartless and the whole link between their hearts, which is somewhat set up on the beginning island, but was one of those things where it felt a little hand wavy to me. So I like their characters. Obviously I've seen like teenager Kairi
Right.
and Kingdom Hearts 2, so I'm excited to see her. I assume Riku will be back, since he's traveling with King Mickey. But I like them as characters. I don't felt like I actually got as much time with them to make them as impactful as I would have liked in the first game.
Yeah, that definitely speaks to what you said earlier about how, like, the Disney polish was the focus, and it's really well done. And obviously Sora's, as this new main character in his quest through the game, is well done. But yeah, the ancillary window dressing of like what is new about Kingdom Hearts, like it's a quote unquote. A lot of people are still like mad about newer games these days, really pulling back from the Final Fantasy stuff. Because that's what we were promised. I'm like, first of all, guy, it's been 20 years. Get over it. Sure, maybe the marketing said that, but even in the first game, cameos at best. At best.
Like, despite the fact that it's implied that Squall, Yuffie, and Aerith are running around doing things because like they saved Geppetto and Pinocchio from Monstro, it's not like they're never in your party. You're never questing really with them.
Right.
They're there. I mean, Cloud is extra gothy grumpy to the point where he's taking fashion tips from Vincent. Apparently,
that's Tetsuya Nomura there for you.
So, like, don't get me wrong. It was cool to see. It was cool to see Squall. My wife is adamant that his name is Leon because I think that's what they call him in
They
Kingdom
do.
Hearts.
I don't know why, but that is what they call him.
The Final Fantasy was cool. I mean, it was cool, but yeah, I don't feel like the Final Fantasy aspect was integral at all to the story the way that the Disney aspect was. I mean, the Disney aspect to me is what really makes this. I mean, the Final Fantasy was, hey, we have some recognizable characters, we'll throw them in here. But even then, it's like they're clearly not they're not their full video game counterparts.
They're their own unique Kingdom Hearts versions of themselves.
Yeah, which I guess is kind of true of everyone because you kind of play through a lot of the variations of the movie stories anyways.
Right.
But like the like Final Fantasy 8 and Final Fantasy 7 do not exist like in the same universe.
Correct. They all these Final Fantasy characters for the most part come from a singular world that has been consumed by darkness as of Kingdom Hearts 1. So
and maybe that's me being a little too tightly held, but I was like, what? Like Squall doesn't hang like in and of itself. It was weird to have like two Final Fantasy 7 characters following the lead from Final Fantasy 8, and I was like, where did that come from?
Yeah. It is an interesting way they chose them because there was a lot of 7 across the series, and then smatterings of 10, and then Squall is the lone 8 representation, and then they get a couple others later on. But yeah, it definitely pulls back in favor of pushing. Disney will always be at the forefront, absolutely, as the like main framework. But then there's always going to be what has basically become the Kingdom Hearts original content with Sora and every other original character that they've created for this series, and it makes total sense to me that would become the forefront. And if you want some weird Final Fantasy crossover, just go play Dissidia, because that's all you're. It's never going to happen otherwise. They're not going to make anything. I mean, they have like actually decent mobile game that I've talked about on this podcast in the past that I will not talk about right now. Anyway, so yeah, you enjoyed the beginning mostly. What I like about it is that it sets up. I think this first game better than any other game. So you voiced it as it ended up being a little too confusing for you, but I love it. I love the confusion, and maybe it's because I've played future games and they've made explanations for that confusion. Not to say that it was always going to, that it always meant this, but they sort of retconned reasons as to what these various vague things mean. But I love good vague storytelling. Sometimes the less you know, and that you'll ever know, the better for me. Like, because then my imagination can inject into whatever.
Yeah, I am being a little hypocritical because like I just came off of Hollow Knight, not that long ago, which doesn't give you a lot of details, and I loved it, and I lapped it up, and and maybe it was just like because I was surrounded by Disney, and Disney's not exactly that's not Disney storytelling,
Right.
and I was expecting Disney storytelling, so I had a disconnect in my brain that I struggled with.
How do you feel do you feel like they wove in the Disney to this weird Kingdom Hearts universe well, or did you feel it like was like, you know, a little oil watery?
I mean I like what they did, but it's clearly like a let's shoehorn in Disney mechanic.
Gotcha.
You know, it's because like, you know, and they even talk about how, you know, all the worlds previously were separate, and it wasn't until the Heartless started coming and the walls between worlds broke down to, you know, where you could even take the gummy ships to get to other worlds. They were always all, you know, separate from one another, which is cool and fine, but it was clearly like, you know, you could have made this game with like Sand World, Water World, you know, Creepy World, and it wouldn't have been as good of a game because it wouldn't have grabbed the iconography of that Disney brings to it. But like, you know, weaving in the Disney didn't exactly I don't know the exact word I'm looking here for, but it's not a vital ingredient. It is one that I think helps elevate this game in terms of drawing in its fan base, and giving it that ability. Instead of having to maybe establish as much lore, you're able to just rely on the fact that most people know their Disney cartoons, and therefore you can play off that a little bit more, which does help the game.
Right. You bring up an interesting topic. Gummy ships. How did you feel about this incredibly irritating mandatory minigame?
My biggest issue with it was the building your gummy ship thing was a pain in the butt to use.
I've never once built my own gummy ship. Not a single time.
So I built the gummy ship, and it was a powerhouse, and therefore it made all those segments super easy for me.
Yeah.
And it was basically just like, all right, just hold down A and move around a little bit and get through this. But yeah, I mean, it didn't add anything to the game for me, but I didn't find it so annoying as like I know Katie does, where she hates the gummy ship.
It's
and
stupid.
wishes she could, you know, those segments just did not exist in the game.
Yeah, it's beyond unreasonable to force the players to do it after. So I mean, it's become tradition at this point. It's in Kingdom Hearts 2. It's in Kingdom Hearts 3. The best version of it is in Kingdom Hearts 3, because you actually get to explore like the space area is like quote unquote open world. Like when you're in the gummy ship, you can technically fly from one planet to another, you know, if you can get there, or the story says it's okay. There's still a level selection aspect to it, but it's huge, and you're traveling through space like manually rather than on this like Star Fox like track.
Instead of being an on the rails shooter.
But yeah, I've never found it to be difficult. I just hate it. I hate that you have to do it. I hate how long it feels like it takes. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's well made.
Because you can tell it's like segments of like little mini sections you go through, and it's usually strings like 3 or 4 of those together.
Right.
And usually after like the first or second one, and things would fade, I'm like, am I at the end? Nope, another one. All right.
Right.
It's definitely like a flow break to the game where you're like, I beat this world. Let's move on to the next one. No, I got to go through this 5 to 10 minute rail shooter that kind of does feel disconnected from the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it wants to be some homage to like a shmup, like an Ikaruga style thing. I'm like, but you're not good enough to do that. It's not fun enough.
Well, and it does remind me of a thing that we tended to see in games more so than maybe we see now, which was like games had to have those other modes. Like they had the like, you know, the mini game modes, you know, and you go back to Final Fantasy VII having like the submarine segment, and the snowboarding segment, and you know, or even the like, you know, like the running your, you know, the first time you infiltrate the Shinra building and having like run your crew pass, where it's like they like to have those weird little mini games as part of as a requirement within their game, and I just took this to be this game's version of that.
Yeah, and there's other mini games that are way more fun because they're way more bite sized and oftentimes extremely optional after, you know, or maybe you just do a quick version of it once. And there's good rewards. That's the other thing. The gummy ship, to my knowledge, maybe you get a material, like one piece of the puzzle to create like a really good weapon or something. But to my knowledge, doing good at the gummy ship is only good for doing better at the gummy ship, because there's missions and there's harder tracks and stuff, and that's fine if you want to go do it. But like for me, who doesn't like it, there is no incentive to do it, and thus I would like to skip it entirely.
Yeah.
So,
my greatest frustration ever with the gummy ship was when I intended to click warp and I clicked,
oh my gosh, oh, that's just
no!
bad game design / old game design. It's just like it should never have been possible at yeah, exactly. Like should have been some other.
Or yeah, because I think if you were one that was that you could only travel to adjacent ones, but if you're on those, the default option was to travel as opposed to defaulting to warp. So you're just mashing A because you're trying to go,
right,
or
exactly.
mashing X because you're trying to go. It's like no.
Like if you wanted to do the gummy ship, an accidental warp is way better than an accidental travel, and because you couldn't quit it. If I'm not mistaken, you couldn't if you
you were stuck. You were like, well, all right, here we go.
Super Mario World came out in 1991. And if you'd beat the level already, you could exit out of that level by pressing start and select. Every game has a level select situation should let you do that. It's ridiculous that they did. Also, no. So there was no skipping of cutscenes. Did you ever run into a moment where you died too many times and had to watch the same cutscene over and over
Final
again?
Mix introduced skipping.
Oh, that's right.
Apparently.
You don't have that. So,
correct. When I got my butt repeatedly kicked by the dragon form of Maleficent, I was able to skip that cutscene of her having her heart ripped out by Riku over and over again. Which my wife, happily told me about how back in her day the cutscenes were unskippable and how lucky I am to live in this upgraded world.
You'll never take Kyrie's heart. Over and over and over again.
That would have been rough.
Was rough, but
because I think it took me like 5 times to beat Maleficent Dragon, which basically culminated in me going, I wonder what this Tinkerbell summon does, and then going, oh, it heals me for the entire fight.
I've never used it.
Cool.
I've never used the summons because
it's easy mode.
It told me it meant that I had to use the horrible menu system with the D-pad while also still being in it's terrible. It was terrible.
True.
So I just never bothered to even put it on like a quick thing. Like all I ever used was the shortcut to do cure, and that was it.
Now, so I mean, I tried out each summon once just to experience them, but in that fight I was like, I haven't tried this Tinkerbell summon yet, and I did it, and then it's just a constant health regen.
Yeah.
She just like every few seconds, she's just like, here, have health back. And apparently, as long as you don't take a hit that would kill you, which she'll shield you from, she never goes away for the entire fight.
Pretty great.
So you're like, oh, I'm a little bit low in health. Runs around the perimeter for 10 seconds, back to full health, goes back to fighting.
That's awesome. I'll have to remember that in future playthroughs because certain fights can be extremely annoying even when you're pretty leveled up and you're using other proper tactics.
Yeah.
About summons, I don't remember, so I will move on. Oh, no, never mind. But as an aside, do you have a favorite Keyblade?
I actually got a lot of good use out of Hercules.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. And I know the game's like has shorter reach. Well, clearly the way I played this game was to shove my face right into into the face of my enemies, and so the reach never impacted me, and it just dealt so much extra damage compared to any other Keyblade I had at the time.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what the reach is for, except for maybe like wider sweeping attacks to catch enemies that might be nearby. But the game is designed to kind of like home in on whoever you're attacking. Like there's a certain amount of like gap closing, and sure, maybe the reach might save you 1 out of every 20 attacks that wouldn't have connected. But I really don't know the purpose of the reach.
Yeah, but with the Herc Blade, that extra damage it did more than compensated for that.
For sure. What did you how did you like the equipment system and the ability system and AP and all that? You thought that was satisfactory for this type of game?
I think it was serviceable. I wouldn't say it was anything astounding.
Right.
I felt like I do feel like Goofy and Donald's.
Dooful. I've
apparently if I combine those two, I get Dooful.
Disgusting chimera of Disney cuteness.
I felt like their gear was pretty much largely neglected. There didn't seem to be a lot of gear to get for them. And part of that was I expected every world. I came at this almost thinking about like every area of of like Final Fantasy games or Mario RPG, which is another Square Enix, go use someone else's property, I guess.
Yeah.
there were like, oh, I got this area. There'll be a shop somewhere around here. Like I thought Agrabah would have an area where there'd be a shop and I'd buy stuff, and there's only the shop in Terrytown. And so
Yes.
like, and that got some new stuff over time, but it was like I felt like I was halfway through the game and I got the best item I could buy from the shop for Donald and Goofy, and then there was maybe like one or two others that I found in a chest for each of them. So theirs felt neglected. Sora with the Keyblades was nice. I mean, there was a definite, every time you beat a world, you tended to get a better Keyblade. Yep. And so I progressed mostly along those, but then there were a handful of like, that were, kind of alternate, found them in a chest or got them via side quests, and they were nice because they tended to be a little more niche. So like, the Chocobo Keyblade was, okay, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of magic, but he does a crap load more damage, which is why ultimately I tended to use that one the most near the end. There were, but then there was like, I think it was like I don't remember. I think it was a second one, an alternate one I got in Agrabah. I think I want to say that was magic focused, and therefore if you wanted to go more the magic route, I had specialized in offense, and then I had sacrificed defense. So I was all about dishing out as much damage as I could, and then healing myself frantically when I was almost dead.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's only so many playstyles, especially in the first one, but even through further on, like, he's always going to be a Keyblade master, so he's going to use his Keyblade. You can be a mage, quote unquote, but you're still whacking people with that Keyblade. What choosing those options do, it determines the order in which you obtain those passive abilities, and those can then influence playstyle. Like the attack one is going to give you things like combo plus and combo additional hits and that kind of thing. Defense will give you things like the enemy's wailing on you in their combo, you can't get out of it, but you won't die. You'll have 1 HP as long as you had more than 1 HP prior to that combo starting. The magic one's like, oh, you'll recover your MP faster, those kinds of things. But it just depends on what the selections are.
I didn't know that essentially changed the order that you got your movesets. That is actually very interesting.
Yeah, and that's something they'll continue for the rest of the series. So I don't know what selections you made in Kingdom Hearts 2, but it's already made itself
more attack.
More attack. It's a totally viable option. Like, especially, I mean, like, people make fun of this game for being just smash.
I'm the hero of the story. I do nothing but attack forward.
Dragon smacking. Smack those dragons. All right. Let's see. Let's talk about the greater Kingdom Hearts story with the Heartless and Ansem, Seeker of Darkness. So we talked a bit about, it's basically, there's tiny hints here and there throughout the game. But for the most part, the middle 80% is just Disney stuff. And even like the new story of like the Disney villains being using and working with these Heartless is still very Disney focused, with the Shadow Cabal of Maleficent and Captain Hook, which I love.
They're just directing the Heartless to basically creating the opportunities for the Heartless to do their dirty work is what I took that to be.
I loved that aspect so much, and then they thrust the villains. The villains become completely new characters. They're all original Kingdom Hearts characters, and the plot becomes Kingdom Hearts focused while going to Disney World, and I that's why I loved Kingdom Hearts 1 so much. I still like 2 better, but I love 1 the next most because of that really nice integrations. Like Disney either let them or they decided this is how they wanted to make the game. Like, the Disney guys are the bad guys. Yeah, we have this other bad guy. He's the final bad guy, but the Disney guys are causing problems as a group, and that, I don't know, I thought that was interesting. Anyway, I got off.
I'll be sad to see that go because I was kind of looking forward to seeing either other Disney.
They don't go away entirely. It's just they don't. Their role is different. You'll see.
Okay. I mean, I've seen enough jokes to know that apparently I have to beat Genie Jafar at least several more times.
Well, he comes back in the second movie, and he comes, the second time they bring the Agrabah back, they just do Jafar Return. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, and then a lot of the side games create reasons to revisit old worlds from previous games in the same like exact way. And so Genie Jafar might be the most repeated boss of any Disney boss in the entire series as a result. So we talked about Destiny Islands and the setup. Then you get to Traverse Town, which again is a wholly new place. It's this kind of like way stop in the universe.
Terrytown is Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, you said Terrytown. I knew it was wrong, but then I was like, wait, what is it called?
I'm pretty sure I said that wrong.
Because then I wanted to say Twilight Town, which is not until Kingdom Hearts 2. So, did you like Traverse Town? Did you think it was I love it. It's got really cozy vibes.
I did. I liked it as a hub. I liked kind of the scene where everyone had come together. I loved running around the Dalmatian house. The Dalmatians was the one thing partway through the game where I was like, all right, I know I told Karch I was going to skip most of the side quests, but I'm going to find all of these puppies.
I've never done it, so was it rewarding? Did you enjoy finding all the puppies?
Yeah, I got the final upgrade to Arrow, which was quite nice to have. But also, like, there's the one little puppy that in one of the rooms where he just follows you around forever was adorable, and all of the puppies were adorable. So I did get. Katie went and got all of the Trinities actually for me, but I made a point of going and getting all of the puppies. I was actually near the end, and I was like, I'm missing one puppy chest, and I was like, I was the part where I was like, I gotta go find a guide. I gotta find these puppies before I finish this game.
So cute. Yeah, never found all the puppies. I remember trying to at one point, and then was like, they were giving me like gummy pieces as rewards for the ships. I was like, I'm out of here. Screw you, dogs. Forget this.
I think there was a Keyblade in there at one point, and then it was the final Arrow.
I wonder if the
upgrade,
Keyblade's new.
The Aereo.
Yeah, the Arrow. I never used to use. I was a dumb kid, and then I didn't replay for a long time with a proper let me use these systems mindset, and I always skipped Arrow because I didn't read the description. I just thought it was another attack spell, but in fact, it was a defense spell, which I used to great effect the last time I played through Kingdom Hearts 1.
Yeah, I assumed when I first got it, I was like, all right, cool. I got the air spell, and then I think Donald casted it on me at one point, and I was like, oh, this is my defense spell. I was like, yes, please. I would like barrier.
Yes, exactly. All right, so then we got Traverse Town, then we go through a whole bunch of Disney Worlds, and then finally we get to one of the, to this day, most beloved sections of any Kingdom Hearts game, and that is Hollow Bastion. How did you like Hollow Bastion?
I enjoyed it. My issue at this point is I was still a little like we were transitioning away from Disney at this point, and so like Disney villains banding together using Heartless made sense. And then I get the Hollow Bastion, and that's where at this point you've seen Riku, and he's been working for Maleficent, but also there's beginning of this hints of Ansem, who had been mentioned earlier as this guy writing because Aerith of all people gives you like his journal, and so like. Probably my issue was, I was getting those Ansem journals and I didn't read them until like Ansem showed up in the game, and I was like, I should probably go read these now.
They're pretty important as far as setting the tone. If not, like it's not especially expository, but it helps when that guy eventually shows up to kind of
and so my issue was I got through Hollow Bastion and Ansem showed up, and I was like, wait, the guy that wrote the journal that Aerith gave me, I was like, and so I got through that fight and I was like, I should go read those now, and then I was like, oh. This makes more sense.
Yeah.
But as far as the level design itself, I enjoyed that. It was fun fighting little baby blue eye silver dragons, and kicking their butts. Had definitely the toughest series of boss fights though, between the solo Riku fight, which was tough because I couldn't use Tinkerbell because you can only use summons when you have Donald and Goofy pulled up.
Right.
And then that fight followed by fighting the dragon was tough, but I will say I think the Riku fight was the solo Riku fight was tough enough that was where I found I was like, okay, I have figured out what little intricacies this combat system does have. It like that fight forced me to find
yes,
like,
it does.
okay, I'm gonna have to learn how to get good at this as opposed to just wailing away on people.
It's kind of like a prototype for a lot of boss fights in the future, especially when you're fighting a more humanoid type character, which is usually where the best boss fights are reserved for going forward. Again, like it's like the proto version of those, and where the system really starts to shine. Because otherwise, it's like it's always so different. Like, okay, you're fighting a dragon. No one's gonna fight like Maleficent afterward. You're not gonna fight another giant dragon, so it's gonna be really different. Same thing with the Ursula fight, and so forth and so on.
Ooh,
come on, doggy, go away.
Tough one. That was a particularly hard
fight. I hate that. Is my least favorite fight in the entire series. The large Ursula fight in Kingdom Hearts 1 is, without a doubt, it's just unfun. It's absolutely, there's just nothing fun about that.
Yeah, and it's just got very, very annoying mechanics between her sucking and having to swim away, which is probably the least annoying of her mechanics. But then everything else she's blasting at you, it's like this is just. Yeah, I did not care for that fight. I felt and I felt like that fight needed some kind of like. It needed some kind of like, oh, if I do this, I get a temporary leg up, and it just never had.
Right.
It was just nope, just slog through and try and try to last through this fight.
Here's this lightning you can't dodge and anticipate, and then we're gonna throw you back again, and then now you got to get here where you can only attack the head, even though this creature's like it's just
yeah.
All right, so you get kicked out of Hollow Bastion, and then you have to return, and then you go into the portal, and things get weird.
Which, well, so right before that, because you free all the iconic Disney princesses
And Alice.
and Alice.
They hadn't created Rapunzel or Elsa yet to fill in, or Tiana or anybody after that.
Which like. So just a couple things there. One, Beast is awesome.
Beast is so cool.
Beast is so angry at losing Belle, where he should have crushed down into nothingness.
Right.
It was like, no.
Exactly. He should have become a summon crystal essentially, but he just through sheer force of will, which is a pretty big theme in this game or in this series. He said, "No, I'm going through the darkness, which is space, and I'm finding my way here."
Like apparently, like doggy paddled his way through space to get the Hollow Bastion to try to save Belle. It was cool to see all of the Disney princesses. My only regret there is, well, while you get to talk to all of them, it's in gameplay talking, so they're not voiced.
Yeah.
It would have been cool to have, and I know it would have been a lot more voice actresses to bring back, but it would have been cool to have like a moment of talk, of like a cutscene with all of those iconic characters
For sure.
that I would have liked.
But it is neat, it's like, oh, okay, there's something special about these princesses, and they like.
Plus Kyrie,
yeah, and you get to see at least Jasmine, Alice are the only two that feature in the previous worlds, right? Because then the rest, and then Kyrie's one of them. Kyrie is one of them, if I'm right. Yeah, you saved 6 of them, and then Kyrie's the 7th one. But yeah, it's cool.
That's the whole share heart segment because like Sora cuts out his heart to give it to Kyrie, and then turns in. You get that little moment where you're running around as the weak, the weak little.
That's
Heartless.
such a cool moment. Did you like that?
It is. I did. I really enjoyed that, and then like it was briefly set up where because there's something about I think a charm she gives him back in the beginning about how or no, it's a fruit or something that if they eat those who eat it together will share a heart.
Right.
And so it was a nice little callback. Again,
so you might
it didn't land as strong as I wanted because I like I said I would have liked a little more time with Riku and Kairi maybe at like the middle of the story before things splintered off again. But it was still a nice moment.
I don't know. I don't think I meant when you brought that up. That would have been really nice. I don't think I meant to I don't think I did come back to that. But it would have been really nice to have a moment where she wasn't catatonic, where Riku, because you get that with Riku and Sora. You think. And for really no other reason other than the plot dictates it. So, like, they meet up. At this point, they should all be traveling together. They meet up in Traverse Town, but then he has, like, a moment of jealousy when he sees the fact that he knows 2 other people now. And then he runs away into the darkness. I'm like, what is...
You made new friends. How dare you?
The Heartless segment. So you were saying that they share a heart. It's not quite that way. So they did eat the fruit. That's more metaphorical. That's just like okay, we're star-crossed lovers.
I figured. I figured it was to set up the fact that they had this already innate. They are this is why essentially they're star-crossed lovers is because they've always been bound to one another.
So what happens is in the beginning, because Kairi is this pure princess of light, etc. or whatever. She can't become a Heartless. So her heart leaves her body, which is what happens when you become a Heartless. Your Heartless, is removed, or your heart is removed from you, and the heart is technically what becomes that creature. She can't do that. That doesn't happen to her. It's why she's just this, empty husk when you find her in Neverland. And the heart found its way into Sora. And at one point he says, Kairi's heart is inside me? ? And then when he puts that key in his chest, he's unlocking it. It goes out and goes back into her. But he also accidentally turns himself into a Heartless. Why does he have control of his brain and faculties? I don't remember. I'm sure there's some retcon that explains it. In the first game, it's just kind of cool because then he finds her and she purifies him and blah 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 blah. Yeah, I really love that scene because you get to control it, and it's just kind of like all you have. There's no enemies, so you get to explore this castle as you try to find your way with none of your abilities or normal interaction options. And the music, which I really love.
Lot of jumping off of the side of buildings.
Exactly, which is so funny. Like that's the preferred and expected way to get around. And then all you have in the music just really punches through because there's just nothing else going on. You're just there's just the architecture and the scenery, and then the music of Hollow Bastion, and then you find your way there. And it's great because you go up to Donald and he's like, "Go away," and he's just like bonking you on the head like it's no big deal.
Love Donald.
Donald is so good. I have never
his perpetual grumpiness, but also I know all things. It's just such a fun character to do.
And it is. They both he and Goofy they're it's a joke. He's like, I'm the high wizard of King Mickey's court, and I'm his like lead knight or whatever. And it's like, oh, haha, whatever, because he's a king and he has like those are their titles. But every now and then, it's like usually just like one moment per game, they have like this. It's like, no, these guys are cool. Like they're not just like they're not just. It's not just kind of funny. It's like they're awesome.
They're not constantly the butt end of jokes.
Exactly. It's just enough.
They are the butt end of several jokes,
Right.
but usually they're part of the joke. And then every so often they do have their moment. You're like, oh yeah. This does make sense.
And if you did it all the time, it would be too much because it's Donald and Goofy. They're Disney characters. That's not what they're there for. But every now and then, Donald casts some cool spell, or Goofy's like he shows off his knightly virtue. Like for Goofy, that moment's when he's like, I don't care. Sora's my best friend, and then Donald's like, "Oh, fine, me too."
I suppose.
All right, so you go through the portal, and you go to the end of the world. I believe was the name of that place you go to, and I really love that creepy atmosphere, like where every little like stepstone in that giant like shallow lake is the remnants of a world consumed by darkness.
Yeah. That whole segment, and was a payoff for the kind of the setting they had established on how these worlds work, but then also it's just like it's a definite like, okay, yeah, nope, we are building towards a climax here, guys.
And it feels heavy.
It does that well,
and it feels like stakes are on the line. It's in the future, Kingdom Hearts will have a problem, at least in my opinion, with stakes. Like, does this mean anything in the moment? Maybe, but then if you take a step back, like, well, like, it's too comic booky in the way that like nothing ever seems to truly resolve, or there was never any danger because everything gets set back to the status quo. But at least in this first game, where that hasn't happened yet and all that.
Yeah, this definitely felt like, hey, I am looking at what everything will be if we are unsuccessful.
So what did you think of Ansem, Seeker of Darkness?
He was kind of generic.
Okay.
To me. And part of that was maybe because I got around to reading his journals very late. Like he just I don't know, he struck me as need final boss character, and that was kind of the role that he fulfilled.
Sure. I mean, you're not wrong. Absolutely. It's the Final Fantasy the most Final Fantasy thing they do in this entire game / series is they introduce some villain too late as the final boss. You don't really know who he is.
Who has some giant like monster form?
Right. Well,
like,
yeah,
cool.
exactly.
I'm fighting end of Final Fantasy VII weird manta ray Sephiroth again.
It's a safer Sephiroth. I think it's supposed to be Seraph Sephiroth, like because of the angel motif. But yeah, he's just this monstrosity from the edge of the universe. But what I like about him, other than his design, I like his character design. I love the voice actor. They never get him back.
Yes.
To even when they're like doing flashbacks, they get a different guy to voice those flashbacks. They got Billy Zane from Titanic, the bat who plays the jerkwad rich guy in Titanic,
and the Phantom.
Yeah, and he does such a good job with the very little he has. And then the next guy they get, he just doesn't have the same gravitas. Anyway, what I like so much about Ansem is like there's this idea, it encapsulates this idea that Sora's just this doopy kid who like fell backwards into this role, and he really doesn't know what he's doing, and there's these huge forces at play. And again, this helps if you do read those reports, because again, that's where it begins to hint at the greater laws and systems of this universe, even as vague as they are, but they exist. Like it ties into the Heartless are looking for the world, and they want to consume it. So I think Ansem succeeds in that regard. But like you said, because of the amount of time that you get to spend with him, which is almost none, he is that shadowy figure you meet in the beginning too. But yeah, he can feel super generic as a result.
Yeah, and that's I mean that's one of the things I when I do play Final Fantasies that I often find most annoying with those type of games is the like third act villain, and you're like, who? No, like I've spent the rest of this game dealing with other problems. Who are you?
Thankfully, if you're paying attention, not to this game but any game where that happens, usually, not always, but usually that villain is a metaphor. And if the game's story was strong enough, and it isn't always.
Yeah, there's a culmination of usually the theme of the game that it's trying to set up. But I mean, I enjoyed his boss fight. I was actually really sad because I really enjoyed reading those journal articles, and I'm guessing because all of them were odd numbered. Like I got 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. I think
There
are the
are
ones you
harder to find ones. There's some that are the story just gives you, and there's
Oh.
others in chests. So you have to seek them out.
So I guess that's what the even number ones. So
Probably.
I would have liked on those because I part of me was like, am I going to get the even number ones in Kingdom Hearts 2? Is that what this game's doing?
There are you won't make that same mistake twice, I'm sure, but there are similar styled text reports that you'll want to read. And they will be out of order. I'm pretty sure you get them all as part of the story. I can't recall, but they are not necessarily in chronological order. And so it's fun to read them out of order as you get them and then go back and read them, and there's only like 11 in there short, but they are super important.
Yeah.
They are super important.
Yeah, so I won't make that mistake again, and yeah, so I will make sure. Which is, it was a weird mistake for me to make because I'm the guy who goes and reads every codex entry in Mass Effect.
Exactly, it sounds like a totally you thing to do. You were
so for me to have skipped the journal for so much of that game, I was like, I don't know how this happened.
Distracted by
I
the
screwed
puppies.
this up. Probably
those dogs.
Puppies were more important.
All right, so
really, Sora's main quest was to go rescue all of the Dalmatians.
Exactly, and befriend Pooh Bear and all that stuff. So
I skipped that. I never went to the 100
You're
Acre
the worst. I'm ending this. Goodbye, everybody. Oh my gosh, it's so hard.
Katie told me not to do it.
Katie, if you're listening, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. That's all I have to say. It's the peak of Kingdom Hearts heartwarming stuff, and it's really good in 2 because it ties back to all your little Pooh adventures in 1. But whatever.
Oh, now I'm gonna have to go do it.
Whatever.
I guess. Great.
Anyway, what did you think of the ending? So Ansem's been defeated. The door to Kingdom Hearts is open, but then Kingdom Hearts is light. What? And then King Mickey's on the other side. And then
because by this point, King Mickey and Riku are on the other side. Because when when Riku got, I guess, taken over by Ansem, his self got banished to the other side of the door. Which I'm guessing that's just what happens to people when they get they go heartless or something.
Basically, they were in the realm of darkness. That's
yeah.
To sum it up real quick, without it really, now that we've gotten to the end of the story in the first game, they were in the realm of darkness while you were traipsing around in the realm of light. And yes, he got there as a result of being too evil.
Yeah. I like it. I like the notes that it sets up because you've got some nice plot lines that I didn't feel the fact that they weren't resolved wasn't where I feel like that this game is not tying up its loose ends. They were properly to me they were good loose ends to kind of set up at the end in order to build into another game. And so with Riku and King Mickey on the other side of the door, and then they had talked about as you're going around Hollow Bastion that, hey, if we finish this, all the world and we'll bring all the worlds back, but all the worlds will be separated again. And so there's this aspect of, what does that mean for Sora? Is he gonna, because either he's gonna get sent back to his world and then he's gonna be separated from his new friends, or he won't get sent back to his world and he'll be separated from, which is ultimately what happens. You get that final moment of him and Kairi getting to see each other, and then the boundary between worlds are reestablished and they're separated. And
it's never really explained why he doesn't go back. Like Kairi does. Everybody does,
yeah,
except for Kairi, except for Sora, Riku, Donald, Goofy, and King Mickey. They all have different.
I was gonna get that where it's like, although it's also I think implied, but that everyone would get sent back to the worlds, and that doesn't happen for Sora, and so they're on, grassland planet, I guess, and but I like that. I like then these they're all lost as what to do, and then Pluto shows up with another letter from King Mickey,
and they just go on another adventure.
That's the nice, because even. Those are the type of like indie notes in a lot of ways that I like in stories. Although had they not had the subsequent games, I've been upset. But the hint of, hey, we finished the story, but there is potential for more for these characters to do. It's not like these characters are done forever.
Right.
I always like that implication that even if the stories we get to see of these characters are over, they're somewhere out there in the ether, they are still doing their thing is a note that I like when stories finish on. And so, had Kingdom Hearts been the only Kingdom Hearts, it was kind of a nice, the way they finished that, I think I would even found enjoyable.
Well, boy, are you going to like the ending to every other game.
I may get tired of it. We'll see.
All right.
If we've learned anything from this, it's apparently I don't play games consistently and view games consistently from one game to the other. So
sure. Let's see. Disney World that wasn't here that you wish was or would like to play in the future.
I would have I think it would have been because we got like a good amount of Beast and Belle. I think it would have been nice to have hit Beauty and the Beast. I'm curious to see because there's I think also actually just that Lion King would have been cool because presumably we would have gotten to see everyone turn into more animalistic forms than Donald and Goofy already are, or maybe Donald and Goofy would have stayed the same, but Sora would become more of an animal so that they fit in with that setting would have been, I think, comical. And then some of the newer Disney cartoons would be interesting. I'm curious to see if they do Toy Story down the line. I think that would be kind of cool, but I think I would have liked to have trapezed through all of the Disney Renaissance settings.
Gotcha. So the late 80s, early 90s kind of stuff, you mean? Gotcha.
Yeah. So obviously we got Aladdin and we got Beauty and the Beast. I would have liked, or Aladdin and Little Mermaid. I would have liked to see Beauty and the Beast and maybe as far up and we got Hercules too. I would have liked maybe as far up as like Mulan, which admittedly we got there is a Mushu summon in the game. So
yeah, so he does exist. Yeah, it's interesting to see the ones they chose in the first one and the second one, and then the ones they chose for those side games all the way up until 3, which 3 started pre-production a while before it finally came out. But even since then, Disney has acquired so many new properties, and so the buzz of I want to go to Star Wars, I want to go to the Marvel worlds, and I'm like, maybe we will, maybe we won't. It's not necessarily my preference, but I'm not going to just immediately throw it out of hand or dismiss it out of hand and say that I won't enjoy it.
I feel like if they start going to Star Wars and Marvel, you're running into more of like a multiverse game or like a metaverse game than a setting a story.
I agree.
Disney.
I agree. It's like
sure, Disney owns those, but those aren't Disney. They're Disney properties, but they're not Disney
right.
settings.
It's Star Wars. It's Marvel. It's not Disney.
Yeah. They're their own.
The art cast. At some point, you have to separate the creativity from the business. Like you can't just attribute whose name is on the checks and the deed of the title. But I'll keep my mouth shut. I'll keep my mouth shut.
For future Spoilercast.
Oh, what was I going to say, though? I was going to say something that I can't say. And now... Oh, it's the same thing. I was just going to make a comparison. When everyone's like, I want Goku in Smash Brothers. I'm like, that's not the point. That's not what that is. And it's like, well, he was in a video game. And yeah, I'm calling you out, Jason. But he's not a video game character.
I've heard this before.
He's not a video game character. You wouldn't just put Sherlock Holmes in Super Smash Brothers because it would be interesting. And that's just the first thing that popped into my mind. I don't know why, but it still stands as a good example. Anyway, do you have anything else?
My biggest regret in that game is I think, if I recall, Aerith is voiced by Mandy Moore.
Yes, she is.
And I'm very sad I did not get an Aerith musical number.
That would have been funny. She does a bad job, though. Not necessarily that Mandy Moore can't do a good job voice acting, but for whatever reason, she was directed and performed in such a way that, like, what is this? This is stupid.
Yeah, it was not great. I mean, and obviously we've seen good Mandy Moore voice acting because she does Rapunzel and Tangled.
Yeah.
And she has that character she played in the Tron cartoon there for the
one. Yeah, I mean, she's a
she's great in those.
At worst, she's serviceable as an actress. At best, she can do some pretty decent performances, and obviously we know she can sing. What happened with this Aerith thing? No idea. I don't know what happens with a lot of Kingdom Hearts voice acting later on.
It is interesting because like even for some of the like established people coming back to the voice characters they voiced before, some of them felt a little off.
Yeah, I think some people are just really good at their craft, and so they can slot into anything, including like a video game, especially an older video game like we had. I just don't think the scene direction for Kingdom Hearts is not very good. It's okay in the beginning, and honestly, I feel like it gets worse as the series goes on. Things feel stilted. A lot of performances can be really uneven across a single character in a single game, or just outright bad if they don't have a lot of lines throughout the game. And it's just, I just wish, because I've seen this same company and these same creative minds. Like, I can't speak to every last person that worked on Kingdom Hearts and then might have worked on another game, but I know some of the lead people who probably have a say in how this final product looks, and their other games are amazing from that respect.
Yeah.
Like why does Kingdom Hearts feel like it can just kind of shoehorn in certain thing. I don't get it.
Yeah,
I just
because it's not like, I mean, we've seen it's not like it's a Square Enix problem. I mean, we've seen really
exactly.
good
It is and it
voice
isn't.
acting in Square
It's
Enix.
confusing because it's their problem at the end of the day.
It's their game, so clearly it is their problem. But it's not it's not like all Square Enix games have terrible voice acting and scene direction.
And I'm not even asking them to stop the zany plot. I'm not asking them to like punch it up with maturity or anything.
Charm.
I just want what you do settle on to be well polished. That's it. I just want the craziness to shine as bright as it can.
So that'll be interesting because, I mean, I tossed a lot of that up to it being an early 2000 game, and I mean, you think about that game. I mean, and admittedly, I'm playing Final Mix, and it looks better and it's polished, but I mean, you can still see the skeleton that is when that game came out. It was a really capable game for when it came out.
Absolutely. And so is 2. Like my complaint isn't that there aren't really awesome moments, and Kingdom Hearts 2 used every last ounce of that PS2 hardware to its benefit for sure, both in cutscenes and combat and graphics and presentation, etc. It's just uneven. You'll go from one amazing scene like, wow, that hit exactly where it was supposed to, and then you'll go to another scene like, that was pure garbage. What was that? And like literally back to back, and it just kills the flow and the mood, and it just I wish it didn't. That's all. Stop it.
But yeah. I mean, it's just, you figure, I mean, 2002 for a game that had as much voice acting in it as that game has, especially on a console, was, like, I'm trying to think of games that had even that amount of voice acting.
I mean, your Metal Gears and your other Final Fantasies did, but a lot of people were still not doing that.
I guess I haven't played 10. 10 would have been its closest contemporary in terms of Final Fantasies.
Yeah. Then 12 would come out a little bit afterward, and then Kingdom Hearts 2 would come after 12.
So I guess that we were getting to the period in consoles where that was becoming more mainstream, because prior to that, I mean, let's face it, no there's no voice dialogue in Final Fantasy 7 at least. I've seen enough of you playing 9 that I'm pretty sure there's not.
No, there's PS1. It was an extreme rarity, and if it was in there, it usually sounded bad.
That's kind of what makes Metal Gear Solid so rare on the PS1.
Definitely.
I guess, is the amount of voicing it did have.
I mean, there were games even before the PS1 that had full on voice acting, but now we're talking like Turbo Graphics, whatever, like the PC Engine, I think is its Japanese name. Which was contemporaneous to the Super Nintendo and early PS1. So you're like, if you go far back enough, and then obviously PC games had voice acting. But now we're getting on a totally different topic. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about your experience with Kingdom Hearts 1 before we close?
No, I will say, because I know I did largely poo-poo on large sauces, and I did struggle to maintain motivation to beat it, although part of that I think was because I was required to beat it. And me rebelling against constraint, now felt like a constraint on my time.
Right.
I have started 2. I feel actually already more invested in 2.
It's the best.
And part of that maybe because it has, I have the lore and all that of its non-Disney stuff kind of established now to lean back on, and so I am enjoying 2. In fact, this morning I just shifted because I had the place. I've talked about this before. I've got two TVs in my living room so that Katie can watch TV or play video games, and so the top one tends to be mine.
Right.
And I had the PS1 on the bottom, or the PS4 on the bottom when I was playing Kingdom Hearts 1 because Katie was playing it a bunch. And now that she doesn't seem as interested to play 2, and so I've just this morning rehooked it back up to the top TV so I can play it, as opposed to only having the Xbox hooked up, and therefore I've been defaulting to Xbox games.
Gotcha. I mean, Kingdom Hearts is an Xbox game. You could have bought it.
I don't have, because I think 3 came out. Like, what happened here is 3 came out, and we bought it, and Katie started 3 and was like, no, I have to go back and replay all of them first. And at the time, the bundle that contained like all the final remixes and yada yada wasn't out on Xbox. So we went and we bought it on the PS4 because it was out on the PS4. Yeah. I think it has subsequently come out on the Xbox.
It has.
But I'm obviously not going to buy the game twice, even though I would prefer to play this like I prefer to play all things with an Xbox controller.
Of course.
But
of course. All right. Well, Sean, I'm glad you finished it anyway. Enjoy Christopher Lee. He is the shining
I've heard about that.
jewel.
I'm excited.
I've
heard him. I've heard.
Right.
Him.
I was about to say you have absolutely encountered the character he voices.
That was a pleasant surprise.
So he's a perfect example of what could be. He gets it. He's just the consummate professional and excellent at his craft. It doesn't like I don't know if it was all him or if they put in the extra time because of his pedigree and like, no, we're gonna work with you and we're gonna make your scenes pop. But like, why do they all not have at least a base quality? Again, you can't all be Christopher Lee. I'm not saying be as good as Christopher Lee, but the way that it's
we could only hope
the way it's
we were all
worked
as good as
into the
Christopher Lee.
scene. It should be at least as half as good as his. Anyway, he's awesome. Yeah. He makes that game he's a reason that game is part of my one of my favorites of all time and definitely my favorite Kingdom Hearts game. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.
Yeah, I'm having fun. I'm probably gonna go play it today. I just started Division 2 as well, so we'll see what wins out.
Distraction. It is a distraction. All right. Until next time, we will talk about the second one. But until then, and I'm gonna use a corny Kingdom Hearts phrase that pops up later in the series. May your heart be your guiding key. Ironically, always talk about niche down. I'm like, well, let's niche down on this, and no.
Niche? Oh God, I've been saying another word I've been saying wrong my entire
niche,
life.
Niche. It's all. I think
that makes me feel better.
I think people say it both ways depending on
I'm glad
the area of the country.
I'm glad this is an archive.